Okay, this video is going to be on how to calculate out our weighted average cost of capital. So I've listed out kind of the details of the case here beside me. So again, we're calculating our weighted average cost of capital. The company sells bonds that are at 12%, they're 15-year bonds, and they're currently selling at a premium of $1,153.72. They also sell preferred stock that is $100 par value stock. It pays a 10% dividend, and it's now being sold for $111.10. And they can issue common stock, and their common stock is selling at $50 a share. The last dividend they paid was $4.19, but the dividends are growing at 5% every year. They maintain a target capital structure of they're going to finance 30% of their projects with debt, 10% of the projects with preferred stock, and 60% of the projects with common stock. So then our goal is to figure out, well, what is that weighted average cost of capital? So we just have to take one component at a time. So we calculate our after-tax cost of debt, and then I forgot to mention that the tax rate, it's a 40% tax rate. Okay, so our after-tax cost of debt, we have to go back to calculate what is the yield on those bonds. So we go back to our time value of money keys, and our N is going to be 15. They're 15-year bonds. The IY is what we're computing, so that's what we're looking for. The present value is what they're selling for today. So $1,153.72. We'll enter that as a negative, so we'll push our plus or minus button. They are paying 12%. So bonds always pay on the par value. So 12% of $1,000 is $120. And then the future value of the bonds is always $1,000. So then make sure your directions go this way. The present value, if you're the investor, it'd be money out today, you get $120 coming in interest, so that's positive, and you'll get the par value back at the end. So that's always how we'll set the bonds up, and then we're going to compute our IY. So if we come to our financial calculators, 15 is our N, $1,153.72. Make that negative by pushing the plus or minus button is the PV. $120 is our payment, and $1,000 is the future value, and then compute the IY. So we get 9.98, but that's our before tax. So then now we take that 9.98% and we multiply it by 60%. So 100% minus our tax rate of 40%. And the reason we do that, so 9.98 times 0.6 gives us 5.988 or 5.99%. And that is our after-tax cost. And the reason we do that is because interest is tax deductible, so we get that savings of that rate, so it makes debt the cheapest form of financing. So I'm going to write that over to the side, because again I'll need to erase this so that I can continue to the next computation. So the next computation says, okay, well, what's my cost? It's a percent cost of my preferred stock. So then I read through that and say, okay, well, it pays a 10% dividend, and it's currently selling at $111.10. So my formula is the dividend divided by the proceeds. So the dividend is going to be the $100 par value times 10%, which gives us a $10 dividend. The proceeds is what it sells for today, and then in this particular one there's no fees or costs, but read your problems carefully because there can be fees or costs to issue, and then we would subtract those from those proceeds. But in this case there's not, so we're going to take our $10 dividend and divide it by the $111.10, and that gives us 0.09 or 9%. So then I'm going to also write that over here, because again I'll need to erase the board. So again, that's our second component. Then our third component is, okay, well, what's my cost of preferred stock? Or I'm sorry, what's my cost of common stock? So the cost for common stock is comparable to the other formula. Now it's just a little bit different because the dividends grow. So it's my expected dividend divided by my proceeds plus my growth rate. With preferred stock, they pay the same dividend every year. There's no growth. It's zero growth. With common stock, it does grow, so we have to factor that into our costs. So if we go back, it tells us that the last dividend was $4.19. That's not my expected dividend, though. That's the last dividend. So if I take that $4.19 and I multiply it by 105%, that's going to give me my expected dividend. So $4.19 times 1.05 takes it up to $4.40. And then the reason I use the 105% is because the dividend will be 100% of what it was last year plus a 5% increase. So it just saves me a mathematical step. So that's my expected dividend. My proceeds are what it's selling at, which is $50. And then my growth rate is 5%. Also be careful on this one because there can be costs or they may have to underprice it. So read those problems carefully to see if there's something more you have to do. Okay, but then we're going to take this and we take the $4.40 and we divide that by $50. That gives us 0.088. Now pay attention though because this is a decimal. So now I need to take my 5% and convert that back to a decimal. I can't add them together. You can't add the percent and the decimal. They're not apples to apples. So take that 5%, put it back down to 0.05, and then now add those together. So that gives me 0.138 or 13.8%. So then I'll write that over here as well. Okay, so now I have calculated my cost of after-tax cost of debt, which deals with these bonds. I have calculated my cost of the preferred stock, and I've calculated my cost of the common stock. So now I can go to my final step, and my final step involves putting it all into the weighted average cost of capital formula. So it's a long formula, and it's our percent financed with debt times our percent cost of that debt, and then we add to that the percent financed with preferred stock, and we multiply that times our percent cost of that preferred stock, and then finally our percent financed with common stock times our percent cost of common stock. So it's a big long formula, and then we'll fill in. So then we know a lot of, we actually know all of these now, but the first part of each one of these parentheses comes directly from our target capital structure. So they tell us that. They're going to finance 30% with debt, so that goes there. They're going to finance 10% with preferred stock, so that goes there. And then they're going to finance 60% with common, so that goes there. So we've populated half of the formula just with using that target capital structure. Then we come back to the numbers that we calculated. So the 5.99%, the after-tax cost of debt, goes there. The 9% cost of preferred stock goes there. And then our 13.8% cost of common stock goes there. So again, it's kind of a big long formula, and what I do just to save the risk of messing with my decimals and my percentages is I actually let the calculator do all of it. So I would type in 30, I push the percent button, then times 5.99, push the percent button, and then push equals, and then it gives it to me in decimals. So it's 0.01797. Then I do the same thing for the next one. So 10, push the percent button, times 9, push the percent button, and then push equals, and that's 0.009. And then my third one, 60, push the percent button, times 13.8, push the percent button, and then push equals, and that's 0.0828. Again, you don't have to do it that way, but just be very careful that you're not intermingling decimals with percentages. You got to get them all into percentages or all into decimals, and I feel like this is just the easiest way to do it without making any mistakes. Okay, then you add them together, and that gives you 0.10977 or 10.98%. So that's the weighted average cost of capital. And then to just do a couple little double checks when you get to this point. Debt is always going to be the cheapest. And the reason it's the cheapest is because interest is tax deductible. So we're always taking that rate and multiplying it by 6%. So this is always your cheapest. Preferred stock is always going to be in the middle because there's no growth rate. It's just strictly what it's paying. And then the common stock is going to be the most expensive because you have the growth rate to factor in there. So if yours don't line up that way, that gives you a clue that you did something wrong in one of those first computations. Then look at your weighted average cost of capital, and it should be somewhere in the middle. It should be higher than 5.99, but lower than 13.8. And say again, depending on how it's weighted, in this case, if there's a little more common stock, so it pushes it that direction. So there's a couple double checks that you can do to just make sure that you've computed it right. But then that is it for this chapter.